One. All right. Welcome to Vibe Osmosis. How you doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good. How are you?
Good. It's been all right today. So, go ahead and introduce yourself first and what you do.
I'm Travis Long. I'm a filmmaker based out of Columbus, Ohio. Um, uh, yeah, the short film that you saw at Dead City was actually my debut. Working on another project now. But yeah, I live in Columbus. I lived here most of my life. Went to film school at Wright State University in Dayton in the early 2000s. Um, yeah, yeah.
What got you interested in like doing movies and writing them and all that?
I don't really know. I've just always been into them ever since I was a little kid. And it's the only thing I ever really wanted to do. Though ironically, I didn't. I waited a really long time to do it. So I'm 42 now, but I didn't. So I didn't make my first film until I went to film school from 2000 to 2005, and then just
Okay.
kind of life got in the way, and then just worked, kind of lived the blue collar life, working in grocery retail, stocking shelves, and then when COVID hit, really um, took a little stock of my life and said, "What am I doing? I need to go back to what I really wanted to do," and so that's what I did. Yeah.
So, prior to that, were you like already like writing like scripts or ideas that you wanted to do because you had some like different like approaches to like doing it yourself too? Because that one that you just shown, you remember you said like you did most of that all by hand too.
Yeah, I was the only. I had no other. I was the only person. I was the cameraman, the director. I
Yeah.
play all the parts in it, um, and that was partly due to shooting a film during lockdown. But it was also I wanted to. If I knew I was going to get back into the filmmaking game, I needed to make sure I could still do all of the things that I learned, and I knew I couldn't. I couldn't be. I couldn't be finding out if I could still do those things with a bunch of people around. Like I couldn't have a bunch of people around while I was still figuring out if I could compose an image. And so I wrote a story that I knew I could shoot in such a way where I didn't need anyone else's help. Didn't need a person there. Now that being said, there is one character's voice that you hear in the film that's not me, briefly, but I was
Right.
able to
I
record
do
that audio
recall.
later.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I did. So now that I'm comfortable that I can do all that stuff, the next project's a little bigger. There will be, there's other actors in it. It's a longer story, a richer story, more characters, a couple of different locations, but it's still primarily based in one location. And so yeah,
And also, I would say like with this what the name of this first one again? What's that called?
sick.
Sick, yeah.
Yeah.
So what also like inspired like the weird flashy collars and like the weird I want to say it's more like dissociative feeling whenever you're like kind of like immersed in that realm. Like what inspired that?
That that came purely from the the films I was watching while I was writing it. So
Yeah.
during lockdown, I was like my brain was basically drenched in whiskey and sangria and Italian horror cinema,
Yeah.
mostly Italian giallo films from the late '60s all the way up through the early to mid '80s. And if you've seen any of those,
Yeah.
they're all wild color. I mean, the Dario Argento stuff and some of the others, they're all about wild colors. They're all about dream logic over real logic. They're often accused of being style over substance. So that's kind of where the visual look for the film came from.
What would you say is your view on like black and white films then?
There's some that are great. In fact,
Yeah.
some of the Italian cinema that's black and white is great. Mario Bava's Black Sunday is one of the great films, horror films of all time, and one of the great films of all time. I know I think it's Scorsese speaks very highly of that film and a lot of Baba's work.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, black and white cinema was great. Those were those were some of the true pioneers that really knew how to expose images, and especially the Germans did that, worked with black and white cinema really well. German expressionism.
Whenever I was younger, like definitely like in elementary or so, my dad was showing me like a lot of the stuff that like his dad would watch, and one of the ones I got into was Don Knotts, and didn't realize like how many of his films didn't have Technicolor, but he was still such like a character that brought so much of it to light, where you just kind of like in today's world, you kind of like ignore like the stuff like, oh, like that technology wasn't there, but like there still was so much of a presence of like this is how the script was going to be, this is how the set was going to be set up, and like especially like the dynamics of the camera works and that kind of stuff. That's a little bit what got me interested into giving other stuff a shot that was a little bit not so like mainstream. Do you kind of like have like any early films that you've seen where you're like, oh, this is like I gotta find more stuff like this.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I saw when I was at Wright State that I probably never would have saw otherwise. F.W. Murnau's Sunrise. I can't remember the year, the late 20s maybe. That's a gorgeous black and white film. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Yeah.
Basically, any of Hitchcock's early black and white stuff is terrific. Particularly the 39 Steps is really good. That's like one of my favorite
Yeah.
Hitchcock movies.
Yeah, it's a cool
Um,
theater too.
yeah, those guys, they really, to your point, the fact that they were kind of doing things with both hands tied behind their backs, so to speak, without the technical difficulties and limitations that they had, and then the fact
Yeah.
that they were making movies during the code period where you couldn't certain things you couldn't say and do, and the fact that like they were still able to put out such amazing stuff is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say is like a hobby you have outside of like movies and film?
Well, I mean, if you were to just look at my life now, filmmaking would almost look like the hobby. I have a full-time job. I mean, I'm a full-time union representative, so I've been working in
Nice.
the workers' rights field for the last 10 years. So filmmaking is really the hobby almost. So yeah, I mean, I outside of filmmaking's the hobby, I guess. Um,
What would you say
I,
is like a random fact about yourself? Like, are you a pet person? You like have like a, go-to place you like to always go to or something like that?
Other than the movie theater, I'm a pretty, I like uh, bouncing around to all the sort of hole in the wall restaurants and bars in Columbus and or whatever city I happen to be traveling in. I always like finding the smaller spots that they're a little overlooked. So I'm a bit of a foodie, and I like finding those bars and stuff. Um, yeah, I know you like to ask people about. I'm a Scorpio to the extent that that matters.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know all your signs, like what your astrology means?
I don't. You'd have to tell me. I don't know.
Yeah, I have to say it's different for everyone, and like whenever I find out like even like the slightest time differences, like I don't know if I was born in the morning or in the evening, like that shit matters.
It does. Well, I was
Yeah,
born in the
yeah.
evening. I want to say I was born at 9 or 10 o'clock at night in Minnesota in like the dead of winter. I was born in November 9th, on November 9th in Minnesota. So it was like I think it was a snowstorm.
I want to
Um,
say the earlier ones get the benefit of the doubt because the later ones, it's like a awkward period whenever other people are about a year older than you, even though like you're still in the same time frame.
okay, I'll
Yeah,
buy
I
that.
mean, from my own, yeah, maybe experience. What would you say is like a favorite dessert you have?
Oh Jesus. Red velvet cake.
Red
red,
velvet.
yeah,
Yeah.
red velvet cake. Blueberry pie. And cherry cordial ice cream. There you
What brought you to Columbus?
go. So born in Minnesota, we moved. My family moved away from Minnesota to Indiana before I was 2, and then we left from Indiana to Ohio by the time I was 4 or 5, maybe 6, and then we've just lived here ever since. Um, yeah, lived in Columbus basically ever since. I lived in Dayton, obviously, for a while. I was going to Wright State, but um, yeah, it's just where the family, where Dad's work took him, and that's where I grew up.
Would you consider like yourself like an Ohioan now at this point, even though maybe like it's not the origin?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like I always hear like from people that moved to like New York and they only lived there for about 10 years, that even after that point they're like, I don't know if I'm actually like a New Yorker or whatever. And I'm kind of the same, like on the same, like I move around quite a bit. I can't necessarily say like this is like where home is. Especially like all my family's scattered now, so it would be really hard for me to be like Dayton's awesome. Because
I see that you've bounced around. It looked like you live in Florida for a while, and then
I
or
did, yeah, to say I got in whenever I turned 17, I got in a car or in a van, and I just basically like traveled and like
walked
never
the earth like Canaan Kung Fu.
never stayed consistent. And like for me it's like whenever COVID happened, that's whenever I took the step back and was like, yeah, I'm gonna stay out in Seattle and like ride this out for a little bit and like
Oh
really
God, you're in Seattle during COVID?
Yeah, Seattle during COVID and shut down, and it was definitely like okay, like I got to see like what the world was like before that, and now I got to see like how it works after, and that's where I think my own like was like okay, like yeah, like what am I more interested in working on and spending my time on rather than like always worried about being out all night, you know? And would you say like there was like a certain shift on like how you wanted to like work on movies too? Because you have this new one lined up. Was that something that you already had like in mind a couple years back?
Yeah, it was an idea that I had in my head, and I don't know when the shift obviously kind of like I said to start making movies did happen during COVID because it's like I think like for you and for a lot of people when COVID happened, everything just stopped, and like I think everyone's shit that they had been running from or doing, everything kind of backed up onto everybody like train
Yeah,
cars, and they like took stock of their life. So that's when I kind of made the turn and started doing this. The new film,
definitely.
it definitely came. It yes. So a couple of years ago, in my roof, there was a hole in my roof, and like where the roof meets the gutters, fascia. I don't know what they call that piece, but anyway, some critters got into the roof, and in the middle of the night, at random times, I would wake up and hear this scratching and these weird noises up there, and it was creepy at first, and then became annoying after a while, and that was sort of the impetus for this new for the new movie, the new script. Um, Now that on its own is not all that interesting, but what what I found scarier than the creepy noises and scratches waking me up in the middle of the night was the thought of what it would eventually cost to replace the roof. Over time, there became more scratches, so it was apparent that there was multiple critters like living up there. So,
Yeah.
the idea that and I'm pretty well off. I make decent money at my day job, so the fact that I was terrified of what it might cost to replace a portion of my roof, I think that's really what the new movie is kind of about. It's more of about just the fear of sort of like I don't know what the best way to say it, like economic doom. It's like pretty much waiting for all of us. You know, you read all these stories about how people are one paycheck away from disaster or living on the street and those kinds of things. So I started from that, and then for us low budget filmmakers, you kind of write based on what you have available. Do you if you have a bus, you try and work a bus into your script. If you have a house, then you work the house into the script. If you have so, I had an actress that's been wanting to break her way in, and she's really talented. So I wrote a character around her. And I do have so my mom passed away recently and left me a house. We have a house to shoot in as the set. So it all those pieces, you kind of work them together, and that's kind of how I landed in the new film.
Would you what kind of movies? Like you have like favorite movies, or you like basically watch too much to say it's a favorite now?
I can't pick one favorite, but my three of my favorites that I tend to say are Kiss Me Deadly. It's a film noir from I'll say 1955 or 1956. It's amazing by Robert Aldrich. It's based on a Mickey Spillane novel. It's great.
Oh,
Uh, Crimes and Misdemeanors by Woody Allen is a
yeah,
terrific film.
that one's really funny.
Yeah. And then Straw Dogs, the original Straw Dogs by Sam Peckinpah is brilliant. But I love all the movies that like it's Pulp Fiction,
See,
Seven.
like the one thing I really like about Woody Allen and Crimes and Misdemeanors is the aspect of like the cookie and like the and you're like wow, like I did not expect like all these turns and like random like details that kind of like pile onto your relationship aspect too. So such a weird movie.
His best films are the ones that aren't goofy. They're the ones that are serious and sometimes have murder, like Match
Yeah,
Point.
like, I agree on this.
Match
Especially
Point,
serious
yeah.
take. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. They're
Situational too.
yeah. I mean, he's a very smart person. He's clearly got a lot of personal demons and issues, but his but Crimes and Misdemeanors is friggin' amazing. It's dark. It's funny. It's
Yeah.
poignant. The performances in it are all good. Like it's just
Right. That
yeah,
doesn't always happen in the Woody Allen films too.
yeah. No,
Um,
is that a Fender Strat back in the corner?
yeah, I'm a fan of Fender. I'm a fan of Fender because the way that they pick up and the like effects and like pedals, like they're always really consistent. I've been getting into Behringer stuff because Behringer, they're really big on their mixers and like whenever you're adding effects that are like digital sound processors into the mixer, there's like no hesitancy. It's like it's always just like almost lossless in the way that it comes out. Um, yeah, like what kind of stuff do you work with whenever you're like editing your films?
I edit. So I edited that first short on in DaVinci Resolve, and that's not what we used at film school back in the day. But when COVID happened, and I got the stimulus money, and I bought my first camera, I bought the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, and that comes with DaVinci Resolve. And so I said, well, I guess this is what I'm using. So I've been editing on DaVinci Resolve. It's great software. And the color grading software in DaVinci Resolve is second to none, I would say. So that's what I use to edit in. Yep.
And also prior, what kind of stuff were you using to like record like your own like little footage or like were you working on any short films side like on the side?
iMovie, on the iPad. Like I
iMovie, yeah.
wasn't since I wasn't doing anything major. Just that. I mean, I've used Adobe Premiere, and if it's a film editing program, I've used it at least once or twice in the past. Played with it. So
One of the ones I'm really big on is Sony Vegas. I still keep
okay,
one up, just because I feel like that one's like a Photoshop for movies in a way.
yeah.
What do you think about like random like these random movies that are so big on using like green screen and like also like having to build like around that like that always being like an editing thing.
Eh,
With like superhero movies. Like, are you a fan?
I'm of two minds about that.
Yeah.
I think I think I think it I don't know. I'm not look, sometimes for the story you're trying to tell and the scene you're trying to shoot and the movie you're trying to make, that's the only way to do it. And I get that.
Yeah.
But I think short of that, it should always be practical. You should always use practical stuff up until the moment that you just can't. And then if you can't, then but yeah, it's weird to see how the world is changing, how they can basically it's more than AI. There's another term for what they're doing, the Unreal Engine. How they're
Yeah.
just creating the whole set. It's literally just actors in a giant green screen room, and they're just acting against. I don't know. I don't know how actors. I would be curious to talk to more actors and how they feel about working in just a giant room with nothing in it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And to me, I feel like whenever I see like stuff about Star Wars, where I'm like, wow, like they were just having to be there, and like all of that is just not there. So like how much like real imagination you're having to bring to something that isn't there. And I think that like for the director, you're like, oh, I don't have to worry about like if these guys aren't doing that great that day because like I got like all these artistic people working on this, building this up. And I feel like in maybe some movies you realize that lack of like it was all like one movie for me like I can really always mention is the Valerian. Like I watched that Valerian movie like 100 times just trying to dissect why that movie flopped.
is it good? I haven't seen it. So it must be
Oh,
good. Then I take it, huh?
it's just such a long stretch of movie for so much to be happening where you like this is just not working. Yeah, what kind of movies have you watched recently?
Well, the last movie I saw was Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that was really weird. That was kind of
yeah,
a fun one for the holidays.
yeah, it was good. I was happy with it. I thought it was going to be more. I thought it was going to be more in the spirit of the trailer that he did. That was the impetus for it. So I thought it was
Yeah,
going to be more stupid and campy. But I've since seen some interviews, and he said that was intentional. He wanted to actually make a slasher, like a slasher that he would have seen, like My Bloody Valentine, or
definitely.
the ones that he loved. He wasn't trying to make fun of it like he was in the trailer. He was actually trying to make one, and that makes sense. And I love
Yeah,
Thanksgiving. I thought it was great. I think he
they
did a
do a
great
lot
job.
of that in these kind of trailers, make it more gimmicky than what the film actually portrays. Like one of the movies I was hesitant on seeing was like X and Pearl, and then once I gave like Ty West a real shot, I was like, yeah, I really see like the standout performances, especially. Um,
So tell me, were those good? Because I haven't
oh,
seen them yet. Because I saw House of the Devil a couple of times,
those are
and I
cool.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. I didn't. I wasn't amazed by it, but then X came out, and I meant to see it, didn't get around to it, and then it's almost like the next two have come out so fast I haven't seen them.
Yeah.
So I really
True.
do. People keep talking about how good Mia Goth is, and so I really do want to see it.
Yeah, I think in this way the character development is like steadily on point and like the progression that you're getting from the other like prequel and sequel, it's like it really like ties in together and makes it more maybe like relatable too as far as that like why isn't things working out and like that frustration. And also like with the TV shows, I feel like right now, like TV shows are starting to take the dive on having stuff like shortened, like limited series and that kind of stuff. Is that something that you'd be interested in trying to do yourself? Like how directors take on really interesting roles with like Stephen King and bringing that to like a limited thing or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes that might be the best way to tell a story, especially in Stephen King's case, because some of his
Yeah,
his books are so long
right.
that the only way to do it is like a 3-part series or more. Yeah, absolutely. Um,
What would be like a book or something that you've read that you'd say like I would try?
gosh,
That one's a little hard.
yeah, that's a damn good question, and I read a lot of books too, and I've not, I don't know. Um, I don't know. That's a, it's a seems like such an easy question. I should be able to answer that, but I don't know. I'll have to think about that one. I mean, there's still some good Stephen King works that haven't been adapted yet, which frankly amazes me. It seems like at this point they would have done everything that he's ever written.
Yeah, just buy them out and then was like, we're gonna bring this to TV no matter what.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to think about that.
For me, like I like whenever I was in college, I was really interested in like the Foucault books and stuff, and like reading them. How there's just so much packed into it, and information wise, just like yeah, it would be really really cool to see like a documentary or something informational, like breaking down all this stuff. But also if you have like real celebrities in this trying to portray like what this is saying, it would be really more informational to anything, but also maybe boring or only for like context and breaking stuff down, especially with like the big stuff on like ideologies and how that plays into like life and structures and dynamics and sex and discipline for one of them too. It's just so weird on how much you're able to put into like a series of books that's not even been touched on by really big documentaries and that kind of stuff. Um, what kind of music do you listen to?
All over I mean, I'm so indie rock. We've got a local station here in Columbus, CD 102.5, that plays a lot of indie rock that I like. But as far as but I grew up liking Dire Straits is my favorite band actually of all time. So I love
Nice.
Mark Knopfler. Mark Knopfler's songwriting is great, and I'm probably one of the biggest Bob Dylan fans you'll ever meet too. So I love Dylan. So I grew up listening to a lot of Dylan and Dire Straits and Tom Petty and that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, basically, if it's in that arena, um, yeah.
There's this one book that I have of Bob Dylan where it's like a series of songs and poems, but like different artists like illustrate the like what the poem and stuff is saying. And that's also something that's not really done in like film as well. Like I think with there's always like really interesting directors or people that are writers that will come to Bob Dylan and say, "Can you maybe like write a song for this one movie or
Yeah,
whatever?" Like
yeah,
that something happens to pan out, and it always really makes sense by tying in like the theme of like what the film is too. Where I'm like, how was some of that there subconsciously, or like you just automatically pick up on that and like it just translates well.
because
Um,
he's just amazing. Like
yeah,
he,
yeah,
he did, and I mean, he's been doing that for literally decades. So like he
yeah,
did the music for Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid in the
yeah.
'70s, and then flash forward to 1996 or seven, and he does a song for Wonder Boys, the movie Wonder Boys,
That
and
was
it gets nominated. I don't remember if he won the Oscar for Best Song, but it was nominated for Best Song, and like the man's just amazing. He's yeah, he's timeless.
Now, what would you say is like another big fear that you have? Like in this new film, you're kind of tying in like weirder elements, and you also mentioned like the bringing back like the classic like creature 80s horror type stuff. Like what kind of like ties that in with like what maybe fears and stuff you have yourself?
Well, the biggest fear theme that's tied in there is the economic piece that I was talking about. The fear that we all have, probably, of being just sort of buried under some sort of financial ruin. But there is also some themes that I wanted to weave in there about loss. The main character has lost her. It opens with her losing her mother. So there's some themes about grief, and there's also a little bit of themes about the burdens that generational burdens that
Get
sometimes
passed down.
unwittingly, yeah, that things
Yeah.
that our parents and grandparents don't mean to pass down to us, but they do. So that's one of the themes in the film as well that I tried to work in pretty well. We'll see how successful I am, but yeah, those are the main themes.
What would you say is like a challenge maybe that you face like while doing like your own project?
Just making all the pieces fit together. I mean, now I'm having to. There's no getting around hiring a couple of professional actors for this film, so I'm gonna have to. That's gonna happen. I'm still trying to cast a couple of characters in it. Just making all the pieces fit together and not stressing myself out and giving myself a heart attack over it. Making a movie is a long, even when it's a short. The thing that you saw at Dead City was only 8 minutes long, and that took forever. Um, it just takes for freaking ever, man. And there comes a point in it. I don't know if music is this way too. I assume that it is. If you're doing an album, maybe like that,
Yeah.
you get to a point almost toward the end where you want to just walk away from it and let somebody else fucking finish it. But um,
Right. I
just
agree.
trying to work through the slog, of it. Um, it's totally worth it in the end. I mean, there's no two ways about it. But it's just getting to that point. Um, yeah, just trying to make all the pieces fit and just get it done, so you have something done that you can. I remember reading. I was reading a book. There's a book. There's an amazing book out there called The Big Goodbye, and it's about the making of the movie Chinatown. And it's one of the best books I've ever read about a movie being made. It came out
And
maybe
it's
a
a
year.
great movie. Like that movie is an
Yeah,
awesome shout out.
yeah, and it's worth a read for anyone who likes Chinatown and wanted to know more about it because
That
it.
was Polanski, isn't it? Or
Yeah,
yeah,
yes, and
yeah.
there is, and in that movie, there's a moment where Polanski, toward the end, he basically kind of, it was all but done, and they were trying to fit just some music to it, and
Yes.
he basically disappeared. Like he was done in the post production process. He was so fed up, he was stressed out that he kind of fell off the face of the earth. And it, I don't know how much truth there is to this, but that, you know, that basically Robert Evans, the producer, and a couple others had to really kind of pin the music on it there at the end. It's true. It's
Oh,
100% Polanski's vision, but
yeah,
it
right.
made me feel better reading that, like, okay, even Roman Polanski gets fucking fed up by trying to finish these goddamn movies. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I totally felt him when I read that passage in there. I was like, oh.
What would, all right, this one maybe is a famous vibe osmosis question. If you were stranded on an island, but you could only take one thing with you, what would you bring?
Christ, I heard you ask somebody that, and even though I knew that you had that question, I still didn't even think about it.
It's a tough one, I think. Because what is that island?
I don't know. It would have to be. You can only have one thing.
Yeah.
Um, hmm, I don't know, man. It would have to be a good book. But again, there's so many, like, where is the island? Like, is this island in the middle of a cold part of the world? Is it warm? Like, is it?
All
I, man, it would have to be a good book. It would have to be a good book, or like the complete opposite. It would have to be a blank notepad and a pen, you know, so that you could not go. You could write some stuff and keep yourself from going crazy. Um, yeah, when you ask that question, I think of, like, I always think of Tom Hanks in Castaway, like
right.
going fucking
That's
nuts
the
and
word.
talking to a volleyball.
And yeah, like he was there for like a long time. Like
Long ass time.
yeah, there was no getting around that island.
Nope.
Yeah, that would be yeah, like what would your like take be on like if you were in a world just like alone, just you, like everybody disappeared. Like, would you still want to survive? What would be your fear on that?
I mean, I would, like, I would like to think anybody would want to.
Exactly.
But it's, I don't know how anyone
I
would
am
not eventually
legend,
go
you know?
crazy. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
You'd
you
have to
be
eventually go a little
insane.
crazy, I think. Um, yeah, I
And
would
I
want to
think there's
survive.
no real way of breaking down like that or trying to like really express that in film of like that real like craziness you get by being alone on anybody's case. Because like it's a lot scarier than like maybe like an actual fear. Yeah, because
Yeah,
at that point like there's just like it subconsciously is happening and there's no control. That that one's a big one, I guess.
and that's like a popular thing now too. Like, right, YA
Yeah.
writers, and you know, a lot of post-apocalyptic stuff being written and made.
Definitely.
Um,
I watched the new one on Netflix, The Leave the World Behind.
is it
And
good?
oh, that one's really cool. Like that one, it puts you in that situation of like, would you have, allowed this other family come and live with you, throughout like an apocalypse is happening and you don't know what's really going on? And also like, or would you like be so against like trying to help people and like how like would you like be turning on yourself every second? And like that one I think really plays a big part on the psychological aspects of that film. I think that's what makes it really like really
Timely.
entertaining. Yeah, entertaining
It's
because yeah, you're trying to find out the development and like where this is going to. Um and
See, that's what people don't. I when I made Sick,
yeah.
I really wanted to. I wanted it to be a snapshot of how everyone felt at the very beginning of COVID. Like it's really difficult to explain it now because most people, like if COVID was 4 quarters of a football game or something, all most people remember now are quarters 2, 3, and 4, where everyone was just mad at each other. It's animosity and anger, and it's just stupid. But
Yeah.
if you can remember all the way back, there was that in the very beginning, everyone really was terrified. Like everyone
Yeah.
really did really weren't really sure. There was this unknown thing
That
that
was happening, and
could
it was
come and
spots and
take you.
spots. Yes.
You didn't know how you were going to get it. You didn't know if it was going to come take you and your
Yeah.
family and your house. And I wanted to kind of capture that initial fear that we so quickly forgot about. We stopped being afraid and started being angry really quick. But I wanted
Yeah.
to remind people there was 5 minutes, it felt like at the beginning of COVID, where we were like, would somebody need to come stay with you? Like, is the world collapsing? Would you have to take in another family? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to watch that because it looks like a pretty timely piece.
There's this one movie. I can't necessarily remember what it's on. With Emery Cohen. He's like he was like a really interesting writer or something, and like his character is basically also in this same verge of like the anger aspect, and then like I don't know, to me it reminded me of like the like actual like rational decision that comes to mind like whenever you're like in panic. I guess I get back to a more interesting vibe osmosis question. If you had a time machine, would you go forwards or backwards?
Gosh, if I was a kid, I would probably say I'd go forwards, but now
Yeah?
I would go backwards, right? There's so much you could
Something to fix.
fix,
Yeah.
so much you could fix or change. I would have to go backwards. Absolutely,
You think if
I
you
would
went
have to go.
backwards, you would have more workout right now, per se, like artistically?
Yes,
I think so
yeah.
too on my end. I think like yeah, the moment that you go back, you would have like a clearer vision of like what you need to do now. What would you say is like a early good memory about like starting to get interested in working on movies and stuff?
An early good memory.
Yeah.
I mean, probably those earliest days in film school. I mean, there's an initial class that I imagine is still taught there. It's the first class you take. If you're a freshman film student, the very first class you take is literally called film appreciation, or it was at the time, MP
Yeah,
131 film
I
appreciation.
familiar, yeah.
And I mean, that really, I already loved movies. I already knew what I was gonna, I already knew this was my major and I was gonna stay in it. But that just made it even better. I mean, we watched, that's where we deconstructed The Searchers and Psycho and Shadow of a Doubt. And I don't know, you just really learned to not just watch movies, but really, really see them, like really understand the auteur theory and yeah, those earliest days of film school. And I'm telling you, the professors there at the time were brilliant. I'm sure they still are, but yeah, those days at Wright State were pretty cool.
This one I think is kind of an essential one. Like, what would you give yourself like the short bio? Like, if you were gonna get Googled or Wikipedia, like, what would you at least want like in the first few lines? How would you want to sum that up?
I wrote one. I have one somewhere, but I forgot what I wrote in it. I don't know.
That's one of those things where I like to also leave it up to the internet or AI because that's what I'm guessing is dissecting it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at what I wrote for myself because that's like I don't know about you, but it's really weird and almost painful to write about yourself. Like it seems dumb and because you have to write something nice. The whole goal of it is to write just to make yourself sound good. And I'm just not good at doing that.
And
And
to me, it's like the facts. I'm like, I don't even know like how to start.
yeah, no, I didn't either. I can't remember. I'll have to look what I wrote and I'll email it to you. But uh, yeah, and filmmakers are, I think, and probably all artists are just, we're not good at talking about ourselves and um, marketing ourselves, if you want to call it that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It definitely something about me being you know, uh, I mean, the biggest thing that I've done outside of filmmaking in my whole life is being a workers' rights advocate. I'm a, I'm definitely a leftist. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Um, I'm a big Democrat, and I'm probably more progressive than most people that you'll meet. So that's a big part of my life is workers' rights and making sure everybody gets their fair share. I mean, that's really who I am. So yeah, that would definitely be in there somewhere.
Do you know like the first movie you went to go to like the theaters and scene or
I
like
do.
drive-in?
It,
Yeah, what was
it
it?
was Tim Burton's Batman.
Tim
That's
Burton's Batman? Oh,
Yeah.
that was prime
I'm
time.
I'm not saying that maybe I wasn't taken to one movie before that I just don't remember, but that's the first movie I remember being taken to in a theater. And boy, what a good one! I mean, that's a fucking good one. And
That
it
one,
like,
that one is the most essential for Batman, you know.
oh, like, and I'm showing I got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I'm showing them like Tim Burton movie, like Frank and Weenie and
Yeah, those are great.
the Nightmare Before Christmas,
That
and
was awesome.
I'm just sitting there thinking like, man, it's so weird that I'm showing like some of the first movies they're seeing are by the same guy who I saw his first movie, or
Yeah.
was my first movie to see back in 1980. I don't know. I think Batman came out in 87 or 88, whenever that came out. But yeah, wild.
Yeah, and like well, one of my favorite quotes, I guess, on that one is, he's like, "Tell all your friends about me," just like you don't get that in Batman. That one's so good.
Me and a bunch of coworkers and friends were talking today about the best bad guys in movies. We were just naming the
Yeah.
best bad guys in movies and the very first one, obviously, off the top of my head, was Jack Nicholson in Batman. But the second one was then Heath Ledger, also as Joker. And then we went all the way down the list. You could go all day on this because we talked about Robert Mitchum from Night of the Hunter, Kathy Bates in Misery, and
Oh yeah.
we talked about them for hours today. Just our favorite bad guys in movies.
And one thing I think is really awesome for like Al Pacino, to mention bad guys in movies, but his like from his youth into now, like the different complexities that you're able to bring to every character, even if they're good or bad, and that
Yeah,
perspective. And like that's also one things where you see is like a gray area for sure, is like working as like the director and the artist too, as like this aspects you're trying to expose and show too about like the realism behind like the surrealism too, because I think yeah, like, once you enter that realm of doing something that you wouldn't do, it becomes automatically like a dream state kind of thing of other people experiencing that are able to still relate to is really fascinating for sure.
hmm
Yeah, what would you say is like top directors for you?
I mean, I love Alfred Hitchcock, um, but I love Michael Mann, David Fincher, Quentin Tarantino, probably all the ones that most filmmakers my age would cite. But then I also like Woody Allen, um, and
James Scorsese seems
yeah,
to, because
yeah, for sure.
he shout out.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, Michael Mann, I really started gravitating toward his movies as a teenager. John Carpenter's older work,
Yeah, yeah,
the Thing, The Fog, yeah, all those. I gravitated toward Michael Mann's stuff when I saw Heat. Once I saw Heat, that blew
yeah.
me away, and I just started watching everything else that he'd ever made. He's a terrific filmmaker. Sometimes his movies get a little long, but they're great.
Would you consider like yourself to have like favorite actors and actresses, or do you kind of still like look at it more as like the work and the story?
No, I mean, I think like everyone, I have, growing up as a kid, I came home from school and put in like, I would rewatch, Die Hard every day. I love Bruce Willis growing up.
Oh
My favorite actresses are probably Kate Winslet and Kate Blanchett.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and at least from my generation, like the ones I grew up watching, there are greats from the old days and stuff. As far as actors, yeah, I don't know. So many. I think that's a kid's first like foray into why they like the movies. Like that's the first thing that they notice. I don't think that I think they notice the other shit later. Like they notice that the writing's great and that the shots are great later. I think the first thing that like a young person gravitates toward is like a performance or like a character that somebody brought to life. That's like their
Yeah.
gateway drug into the movie.
Yeah, that's where I gotta give Leonardo DiCaprio
Mm-hmm.
where it's due because yeah, there hasn't been one where you're like, damn, you see the new one, Killers of the Flower Moon yet?
Not yet, not yet.
That
Is it
one,
good?
I watched it in theaters and I like cried like a lot. But the second time I was able to enjoy the movie for like its actual benefit of the story and development, and also it still felt like really dirty to watch because knowing that you're an American living in like in that world that came from this, and I don't know, it's one of those ones where you're like probably in the future whenever you're in school they might show this in class where you're like fuck.
So,
you know
did you like it better than The Irishman? Was it better than The Irishman?
oh, without a doubt.
Okay.
It was a major redemption from the Irishman on that
Oh,
part.
you didn't like The Irishman that much?
No, I was a fan, but like this movie just I don't know knocks it out of the water on all fronts maybe. Um,
Word.
other movies that I've watched recently, like rewatched on this part, is The Details. It's got Tobey Maguire in it, and he plays a character named Jeffrey. So I was just like, whoa, I never seen this one. Whenever I was younger, I seen it on TV, but like I hadn't watched it like all the way through until finally now, and was just like putting it all together. Was like, what a fucking like weird movie because it is so
Hmm.
focused on the details of it being humorous and dark and also like situational and like what would you do if you found out the person like if you slept with the milkman got pregnant and you also see the milkman every day.
Hmm.
It's just like one of those ones where you're like damn like this is a hilariously bad movie.
That's funny. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
what kind of got you into horror and like the thriller stuff?
I honestly don't know because if I'm being honest, I was pretty dismissive of horror even in my days in film school. I didn't give it that much, and I don't know when. I honestly don't know when that switch flipped. But it was probably sometime around. I don't know, probably sometime around 2006, 2007. I just recall myself starting to watch. Halloween would roll around, and I'd go into when it was still around Blockbuster Video, and I'd grab Pumpkinhead or
Yeah.
something, and I don't know when that switch flipped, but once it did, at some point I just realized that like those films are sometimes more honest about themes in the real world than some of the higher art, some of the dramas can be. I mean, horror really does deal with some pretty deep stuff, but they manage to package it you know, in a more palatable way that people will always.
Yeah.
It's a genre that never dies. I mean, horror never has it down. Certain subgenres of horror will come and go,
Right.
but it's never died out like the Western did for what I mean. Horror is always people will always pay to go see horror movies. They just will.
Now, one
Um,
thing that I realized too is like people will always pay to watch Godzilla movies and movies about mummies. And something about the two, it seems so relatable, but like,
and
why?
apparently vampires too. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Vampires has taken over the world, but I'm like, it's still in today's age from something that happened, back in the World War time. We're still making movies that are like tapping into invaders and, atomic warfare and like turning on each other and all that kind of stuff and like how that plays in today's society still.
disaster movies. If you think of Godzilla as a disaster film,
Yeah.
Though disaster films tend to pop up in periods in history right after a giant tragedy in whatever culture they were in. So if you go back and look when the Towering Inferno was popular, you can find historic events that were pretty tragic that happened just before that. And so people that's why I think that, you know, because there's always, every 10 or 12 years something pretty tragic happens that's
Yeah.
awful, and so I think that's why Godzilla has probably managed to stand the test of time as much as it has.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And like for me, I mean, like I'm not gonna knock down like any of them are bad, but to me, like it looks like at the future, how are you going to revamp this idea and make it more other than just like the technology's gotten better? Because like we've gotten like Apple TV shows and now movies that's like always about like the technology being better for these kind of films. And like whenever you're gonna finally get like the independent artist director taking on that role of it being not like a Cloverfield found footage thing, but a different side of that story, maybe, you know?
Did you
Um,
like Cloverfield?
oh, I'm a fan of found footage stuff, but yeah, like there's a lot of those ones where I'm like they stand up today because like there's nothing like it that's like as detailed and like weird, and you're like, was that, gonna happen? Could that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
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 What with like, making movies now for you in the future, do you kind of also like plan on switching up like from it being like nonfiction and fiction, or do you still kind of always like want to stick to a genre?
We'll see. Um, we'll see. I we'll see. I think for now, something about the confines of a genre are comforting and easy.
Yeah.
Not easy. Easy is definitely the wrong word. It's more comforting. Um, I I don't know. I can't really articulate it, but there's something. It's a little more. There's some training wheels there that you can. Um, I'm just not ready yet to, when you start to get into the world of drama and or even comedy, which I think is
Yeah.
harder sometimes.
Hard. Yeah.
I can direct actors, but I need to take some more steps to remind myself how to do that well, and um, I think I could very well in the future branch out, but for right now, um, I'm going to continue to tell at least one or two more stories within the confines of the horror genre and just see where that goes. But yeah,
Well, I appreciate you taking this time on joining Vibe Osmosis. It's been sweet talking to you. Go ahead
yeah,
and mention your upcoming project and what you have coming up.
yeah. It's the film is called Blood Sugar. It'll be another short, but it'll be probably in the 20-minute range when it's all said and done. The screenplay I think was 15 or 16 pages, something like that. It's
All
called
right.
Blood Sugar. A young Asian American woman inherits a house after her mother's death, and there's a little something else in the house as well that she finds. And I'm shooting it here in Columbus, well, out in London, Ohio. And anybody who wants to help out is free to reach out. Yep, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, that is it. And thank you for having me, and hopefully we can chat again sometime, man. Thanks for coming to
Bro.
Dead City and watching watching my little film with its warts and all. So
No, as I said, that one it holds up, especially as a debut. I'll keep in touch about this show coming out. It'll be out very soon. I work kind of fast, but yeah, thank you for taking this time, and hopefully it's a good rest of your day too.
thank you.
All right, we'll keep in touch, man.
See ya. Bye.